Hi, I'm Beth, and today I'll be showing you how to sew a pair of baggy Y2K styled jeans for Blythe. I already designed a similar pair of jeans for the larger classic Smart Doll, and I plan to create a similar pattern for the pair Smart Doll 2. Once they're both ready, I'll release those patterns for sale as well. Today we're focusing on the 1/6 scale Blythe doll version. As you can see, I simplified the details in some ways, but packed in lots of visual interest that works well in 1/6 scale. As usual, I started with some concept sketching and made some notes and measurements before making my first test garment. I was pretty happy with how this pair turned out, but I felt the ribbon I used here was too narrow and the fit needed to be refined a little more. I made those changes and now have my pattern pieces ready. You'll find this pattern available to download and print at bethramsden.com. The trousers themselves have 3 main sections, plus 2 smaller pattern pieces for the pockets. One of these pieces is used for both the back pocket and the side pockets in this video, but once digitised, this will be 2 separate pieces. One of the main differences between the Blythe and Smart Doll version is in the floating side pockets. In order to keep the overall look but make it achievable, I decided to use crossed over ribbon underneath the lower floating pockets. I then continued the ribbon motif further up the side panels too. You can see the shoes I'm styling these with have nice big chunky soles. I love wearing this style of trousers myself, and these are the kind of shoes or boots I wear them with. We've got a pair of faux pockets in the front sides, and also a pair of functioning pockets at the back. The jeans close at the back with a single snap fastening. The jeans should appear oversized and long in order to be able to scrunch up and be styled appropriately. I really love this style of clothing and I hope you'll enjoy making a pair for yourself. I recommend looking out ribbon in a width of 8 to 10 millimeters in a colour that will suit your project. I think these jeans would look great in many different colour schemes. You could try black for the main fabric and ribbon, with a pop of colour or pattern for the side panels. I'll be using chambray denim, which is a lightweight cotton fabric, and I'll use another lightweight cotton for the side panels. You might be able to recycle denim from a pair of real jeans if it's not too thick. I begin by tracing out my 2 side panels onto this dark blue cotton. I transfer the ribbon placement markings around the edges from the template. This pattern uses a 5mm seam allowance throughout, apart from the lower leg hems. I'll be outlining all my main pattern pieces with fray check. I trace out the back pocket pieces, and on the right side of the fabric I transfer the fold lines using a heat erasable pen. The smaller pocket templates are also traced and the fold lines transferred. I trace the templates for the front and back jeans pieces, once regular and once reversed. The lower hems will have a 7mm seam allowance, which I mark on here. For the back piece, I cut out the pocket shape and trace it onto the right side of the fabric to help me place the pockets later. I also transfer the markings from the centre back. Oops, I forgot to flip this piece. Let me redo that one. That's better. I transfer the markings like this to the centre back pieces. I'll also fray check these. Noted on the pattern is a rectangular waistband measuring 12 by 2 centimeters, cut diagonally on the bias. If you prefer to cut it on the grain, you can make it a little longer and trim any excess if needed. Bias will give it a little bit of stretch. Let's finish cutting the pieces for these side pockets. I've marked a horizontal line slightly above halfway to show where to place the opening. I wrote zip here in case I wanted to attach a decorative zip, but for this example I'll just make it an overlapped flap. On my fabric I'm going to mark where to fold and top stitch what will become the top and bottom flap of this outer side of the pocket. I'll need a scrap of my fabric wide enough to fit both back pieces and mark a line where I plan to fold the top pocket piece in. I add a second line for seam allowance. I give it 7 millimeters. I then draw another 7 millimeter line for seam allowance for the lower half of the pocket. Then I mark a little below what will be the bottom of the pocket to allow for some overlap. I roughly cut out this piece and cut along the middle line. I'll fold in and top stitch each of the seam allowances marked, and at the machine I'll overlap them and stitch the back pieces onto them directly. I've chosen to overlock both of the edges before top stitching. I slightly overlap the two finished edges with the shorter strip sitting on top. I should have drawn this line on the back of this piece, but I'm able to line it up with right sides in with the overlapped line. I'll pin it and then sew all round the edges with a 5 millimeter seam allowance. Here's what they look like when they're both finished. I can now trim away some of the excess seam allowance and the corners before carefully turning them right side out. Repeat for the other pocket and set them aside for later. Next I'm going to make up the back pockets. I've overlocked the top edges of these two and will use a little bit of fabric glue to help me tack each edge in place when I fold them over. Just a little bit so I don't gum up the machine. I can then use the outline to help me get both back pockets positioned correctly, and will sew them directly onto the jeans around the sides and bottom. I'll also use a little glue to help me fold in the edges of the side pockets, and will tack them into place on the front jeans pieces where marked on the template. Here are the pieces we have ready now. Before joining the main jeans pieces, I will use fabric glue again to tack in place the ribbons I want to use for the side panels. This ribbon is 1 centimeter wide, and as I place it, I'm careful to lift up the middle just a touch to give it enough flex when it's curved around the doll's leg. I glue one side and then use my finger to lift up the middle of the ribbon slightly before gluing down the other end. The little pockets will be glued onto the X of the ribbons a little later on. Once all the ribbons are in place, the three main parts of each half of the jeans can be combined. The side panels will be sewn to the front and back, and then top stitched with the seams pressed outward. I'll zigzag stitch the bottom hem before turning up and top stitching, and repeat for the other leg. At the machine, I finger press the seam open before top stitching. When joining the front piece with its side pocket, I prefer to let the pocket stay out of the top stitching, choosing to secure it afterwards. Here's how they look with the bottom hem finished. And next, I'll secure those side pockets by adding some little metal rivets. Instead, you might choose to glue or top stitch these side pockets into place, adding a decorative bead or a snap for more detail. It's up to you. I've also chosen to add little decorative rivets to each of the side pockets. I'll glue them down in a moment and will then join both front crotch seams right side in at the machine, and will top stitch a decorative fly as well. I've folded and pushed a piece of paper underneath the crossed ribbons so I don't get any glue on the panel underneath. If you prefer, of course, you could hand stitch these onto the ribbon at this point. Here, the front crotch is joined and top stitched, and my decorative fly is stitched on too. I've pushed the seam allowance to the left. Next, I'm going to fold in each of the back sides where I marked them earlier. One side is folded 5mm in from the edge, the other is folded 10mm in from the edge. I take the waistband piece, which I have finished with fray check. If you haven't done this, at least zigzag the long edge that will be folded in at the end. I align the long edge of the waistband with the raw edge of the jeans and fold the short edge around where we folded the jeans earlier. Essentially, match both raw edges and fold them round where marked. I will be slightly pulling on the waistband as I sew it onto the jeans, and will align both raw edges at the other end, ensuring they are tucked under before stitching across them. Here I've stitched all the way across the waistband, and you can see both sides tucked in. I can now flip the waistband up, and making sure the sides stay tucked in, I fold them over towards the inside. I fold them so that the raw edge passes beyond the seam we just stitched, and pin them in place to ensure nothing shifts when I top stitch across the waistband again. I can now machine stitch from the front in the ditch to secure the back side of the waistband. Here's how it looks from front and back. Next, I'll align the lower parts of the rear crotch curves. I make sure the ends that we folded in earlier are folded back out so they don't get caught up in the seam. I then sew the lower part of the crotch curve as indicated on the pattern. I quickly flip the jeans right side out to check that everything lines up nicely. There should be a slight overlap to allow us to sew on a snap fastening closure. I flip the jeans wrong side out again and open out the legs, aligning the inner leg seams, pinning and stitching. The jeans can now be turned right side out and the snap fastening stitched on. I decided to add a little decorative rivet to the centre front of the jeans as an extra detail. I think they turned out super cute and that there's still lots of room for customisation. You could use sandpaper or a scalpel blade to add rips and distress the denim, add decorative stitches to the back pockets, and even add little dangling chains and charms. Before I go, let me say a big thank you to all my supporters over on Patreon and welcome my newest members there. S. Val, Cat Mom in Florida, and the Plain Idol Lover. Members of any of my tiers on Patreon will be able to download this pattern for free, and it will be available to purchase at bethramsden.com. I really hope you enjoyed seeing this pattern come together and will consider trying it for yourself. I designed it for the A-zone jointed body, but I also tried it on the Obitsu 22 body for these final shots. I'm sure it will look great on lots of other similarly sized bodies too. Please do let me know what you think of my baggy Y2K styled jeans in a comment below, and thank you all so much for watching today's video. Take care and I'll see you again soon. Bye!